What is up, everybody? Mid-range game is back again. I am Dean. I'm joined as always with my main man Brent. How you doing
Back
today,
in the
Brent?
saddle.
You ready to
Back at
go
it
again?
again. Yeah. This is 2 in 1 week. This is two
The
unprecedented things for us. Yeah.
the bootleg version of Jalen and Jacoby are are, are back at it again. So, but I'm happy. I'm happy that it looks like we're gonna have some basketball starting on Saturday. What is your take on the last, almost 48 hours now?
Uh, I mean, it's crazy, right? I mean, we've never seen anything like this in professional sports, but I'd say across the country in
Right.
our history to have this much uh for racial injustice and this many people pushing forward an agenda that's saying we want change and actually, you know, moving the needle a little bit, or making actually people pay attention. I think at the beginning, a lot of people there's always people that are like, hey, I'm a fan and I don't watch professional sports to listen to your opinions on anything. I just want to see you dribble and do what you do athletically, and that takes my mind off of my day to day is to see that type of stuff. Uh, and so I saw a lot of people after the NBA, after the Bucks said, and then the NBA said we're shutting down the playoffs for at least a day. There was a lot of people on like Woj's tweet and things that were saying, "Oh, they lost a fan, and I'm gonna boycott, and I'm not gonna watch the NBA ever again." And I
Right.
think the NBA knows there are going to be some people that see it that way, but they're like, "Hey, this is bigger than that, so it is what it is. It's unfortunate, but I think when other sports start to follow, you can't boycott all sports if you're actually a real sports fan, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
like eventually you're going to be like, "Well, I want to watch something."
Right. Yeah, for sure. I think it's we forget that they're human too, They're
Oh yeah,
they're our entertainment in that, especially like with COVID going on and everything, they're them getting back to basketball was like huge for me. It gave me something to watch, something to look forward to, as a basketball fan. Any
right,
hooper or basketball fan had to be excited they were getting back at it, and the games were good.
yeah,
Um, the last 48 hours, like you said, there's going to be people that disagree. And it's unfortunate that once we get to the point where we disagree with one another, that it has to turn into tearing that individual down and attacking that individual versus just having a discussion, because you're allowed to disagree with people.
right,
It's how you disagree and what comes of that. And are you listening to the person, first of all? I think a lot of
right,
people just don't want to listen. I think some of it has to do with the most of NBA players look like you, and not as many look like me. But also, when you're talking about millionaires and multimillionaires, I
yeah,
think that also comes into play, that people want to discredit their opinions. However, they have a platform, and a lot of times it takes people that other people look up to for whatever reason to say something in order for other people to acknowledge it. Like the Me
yeah,
Too movement is another perfect example. A lot of women that went through an assault or something that were afraid to come forward, once like the dam broke open with Cosby, they saw that, celebrities that he knew, that he was, doing inappropriate things with. Okay, well, now it's okay for me to come forward. So I think there's
right.
that aspect of it too. um, but there was a lot of passionate um, speeches by a lot of. Did you get a chance to listen to Doc or Robert Ory or Chris Webber, um,
I
Kenny?
saw Doc. I haven't seen everybody, and I really wanted to hear a couple because I know I heard Robert Ory was passionate. Chris Webber's was something to good to listen to. I
Yeah.
heard actually Jeff Van Gundy on SiriusXM radio literally just break it down. It was just like, people are kind of stuck in their ways because they see life in their bubble. And he's like, I've never had to worry about getting pulled over. I've never got pulled over before and someone just asked me why am I where I'm at.
Mhm.
And I've never had these things happen. He goes, but I've talked to, and he goes, you just got to sit down with the black person and not just one, but just listen to what people have to say and understand that just because it's not something I've gone through, have a little empathy and say, would I want to live my day to day with that in the back of my mind, thinking, oh no, there's a policeman behind me. What's going to happen? Or
Right.
things like that. And I thought that was really well put. He was just like, it doesn't happen to me. It's not part of my everyday world. And I think that's where we get caught up in America is, until someone makes you see and makes you listen,
Hmm.
essentially, if it's not my issue, I don't care,
Right.
and the issue that a lot of Americans have right now are they can't see basketball. And that's a bigger issue to some of them than versus the racial injustice that the players and the league is trying to stand up against. And unfortunately, that's how it is. But it is what it is. We all have our what we do on a daily basis. And like you said, you don't have to change your mind. You don't have to do anything. But just kind of
Right.
have a little empathy. Have a little bit. Even though it's not your fight.
My grandfather didn't talk a whole lot. And I remember being in the car with him one time, and my parents and my sister was in the back, and they were all talking. And I asked my grandpa, I was like, why aren't you talking? And he was like, because I listen. And I think a lot of people need to take that to heart. And even if you disagree with someone, you can still
Right.
listen to them, because I think just for people to get it out that they feel X way is
Yeah.
huge for them. And I think that at least that entry point is where you can start to have a conversation about anything. I mean, it goes past the racial things that we're dealing with right now. It goes past that. It really applies to almost all aspects of life. If you just
Right.
listen and, like you said, have some empathy for that person, because we all live different lives, it can make a huge difference. I think the climate right now, I think there's so many things that are driving this story. It's bigger because we're in the middle of, the national conventions have just ended for the Democrats and the Republicans. I think theirs might be done tonight. But so there's that aspect of it. So
Oh yeah.
if you think that the players are left or right, you're going to have a view based on that. And
Yeah.
it's it's really interesting. Just there's a lot of venom towards the players for this,
Oh
and
yeah.
I don't really get that. And we could jump around, but just to make a quick statement about, once things get political, once these athletes did this and news got into it and politicians got onto it, now there's a line in the sand.
Yeah.
Because then, rather than listening, even if you disagree, and making valid points against X or Y, once something turns political, the definition of political should change. It should turn to destroy the other person. Because
Yeah.
once you have something become political, it's no longer about seeing eye to eye. It's no longer about finding common ground. It's, I am going to tear you down as much as I can so that people don't listen to you.
Oh yeah.
And it's sad that that's what has happened with this. There are obviously racial issues. I'm sorry, the people that think that there's nothing, this is a thing that the protests and the marches and the peaceful protests, these are things not just happening in the US, it's happening worldwide.
Oh yeah.
So to deny and think that it's, oh, just these players don't want to work today. Yeah, I mean, they just go to a venomous place, and it's really unfortunate.
Yeah. I think that there's an underlying thing in America where they think that if your life is halfway decent, you should just be grateful for what you have. You're right. And so I think there's a lot of people going, look, you guys are millionaires. You made it. You're making more money than even half the people, in the country,
Mhm.
most people in the country. And you got the nerve to sit up and try to say that you're not happy. And I think that gets lost because
Mhm.
some people just put that personal twist on it. It's like, you know what, just be grateful for what you have. But I think if you look back in all civil rights movements, over time,
Mhm.
that was the stance of the other side every time.
Yeah,
Is,
right.
you know, when it was the Confederacy, which was a rebels, they were against America. That's why, you have the Confederate flag, and people are like, that's not an American flag. That was
Mhm.
a faction that was fighting against America.
Right.
That said, we want our life to stay the same.
Right.
We like having slaves. We like having things down here. We want it to stay the same. And then they lost. When you
One
get
of
a Martin Luther King side, and you
mhm.
know Rosa Parks on the bus and all these things, people fought against them, and they had to march. They had to do the boycott for over a year, boycott buses, because people said, I want things to stay the same. You should be happy with life as you have it.
Right.
And life as you have it is fine. And we don't know why you're complaining. But when you look back now, we look back, we're like, man, life wasn't like, wasn't good for them.
Right.
And Martin Luther King's a hero now, but people hated him,
Right.
back then. He was assassinated. you know.
One of the things that the Bucks read their statement. One of the things that stood out to me was George Hill saying to educate yourself. That
Right.
they're educating themselves as this is evolving, and that everyone else should educate themselves as well. As far as like the like Twitter just blew up, obviously. And if you're watching this live right now, feel free to tweet at us at midrange_game. We have live chat. So if you have a comment, we'll look at it while we're live here. So please feel free to interact. Brent and I are new to the live streaming version of this, which usually just us two having a conversation. But we would love to get other people involved and see what you have to say as well. Um, the games are going to be starting on Saturday, but I think a lot of the players need these couple days to kind of diffuse, not lose their momentum as far as what they're trying to push, but it's got to be stressful, to be everybody's stressed out dealing with COVID, their kids trying to get back in school, hybrid school. They're dealing with the same things. Just because they're millionaires, they still have families that all they're able to do is what you and I are doing right now, which is FaceTime with them.
Right.
And so all that's going on. So you see people getting stressed out. And did you see the report about how a lot of the young players were upset with like LeBron, you know, how he handled things? Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. I think Stephen A reported on it too recently. Apparently, in the NBA, in the meetings where everybody was at, it was like a 2-hour meeting.
Mhm.
Some of them thought he was kind of being bigger than putting himself bigger than the NBA, kind of just going in, kind of dictating. It wasn't,
Right.
and he's very passionate about this.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I don't know. I can see how people would feel that way if he comes in and just, you know, um, comes in big dog on campus kind of thing. Uh, and then it kind of makes them feel a little smaller. But they're all passionate, and they're all trying to get their points across. And and LeBron is doing more than most, but he still has to give due to his co players too. You can see that. So.
Yeah, I think it's a tough ask for the leadership in the NBA because they all have their own agendas.
Yeah.
They all have their own things that they're pushing for. Like James has his I Promise, foundation, and he's obviously involved with uh, the Black Lives Matter movement too. But they all have competing things. You know what I
Right.
mean? So that's a little interesting. And one of the things that I thought was most interesting that came out were the reports of players saying, "Okay, if we're not going to play, what are we going to do? Are we all just going to go home and sit on our couches, or are we going to be out there and go to Wisconsin and talk to people and try to get things pushed forward?" So that was the
Right.
other really interesting thing that I think ultimately may have pushed them back towards playing, because at least then every player, after the game, before the game, when they're talking to the reporter, still has that platform
Right.
versus just saying, okay, we're not going to play. And then how many of the players would be out actively speaking still on this? What do you think?
Right. Well, you know what? I think it's like this perfect storm that's happened. because with the players in the bubble, this is the first time ever they've been able to all meet in one place
Hmm.
and actually all talk about it and all be on one accord. So actually them being in the bubble has aided their unity, because you got to imagine, I mean, they're across the country. You got LeBron in LA and you got players in New York and Louisiana who's dealing with a hurricane right now and things like that.
Right.
If they weren't in the bubble, I'm not sure if they'd be able to pull this off as effectively as they've been able to. So I think being there, down there, everybody in one spot, all the leaders can meet up. The other guys can just get updates if they're not going to be in the meeting.
Hmm.
I think that is a positive thing that allows them to do that. And also being in the bubble, I mean, Milwaukee literally got on the phone with
Attorney
the
General.
leaders,
Yeah.
attorney general and lieutenant governor
Yeah.
of Wisconsin. Like, how's that? You don't see that happen before. They're on there saying, "Hey, we're flexing our muscles here as a big part of your economy.
Right.
We need some stuff to happen."
Right.
And the NBA, the players came back and said, "Hey, we'll play Saturday, but hey, you millionaire and billionaire owners, we need you guys to do this, this, and this.
Right.
The NBA, we need you guys to do this, this, and this." And it's it's a new day for sure. I mean, this stuff doesn't happen, and that's how you get people to listen, is when the billionaire owner is in a swanky party or something, let's say, with other
Hmm.
people who don't believe in this, and they're going, "I wish these players would just do this and shut up and blah blah." You
Right.
need somebody in that room to kind of enlighten some folks. You need
Right.
them to have the conversation as well, to say, "Hey, look, guys, we don't live the lives they live. We are very fortunate, but this is a real thing. They really feel this. This is really happening." And you want that message to not just come across the television, but also meet some of these people face to face who will
Right.
never get that message face to face from anyone else.
Exactly. Hi, Jessica. We got Jessica in the chat. How's it going?
Oh,
Nice for you to join us. If you have a comment, feel free to chime in. We're definitely open to that. Uh, I guess it's almost going to be weird that basketball is going to be back on Saturday. It's like I want to talk about the matchups, but is it even time for that yet? Could you do that without? It almost seems like poor form to even talk about like the potential matchups. I'm interested to see.
oh, we can talk
Well,
about the matchups.
well, yeah, yeah. I
We're not on national news. We got about like
right.
four people watching.
Hey, Mr. Bear, Dr. Bear's watching too. So what's up,
Oh
John?
yeah, what's good, John?
Oh, last time we had people from like England and Greece watching, so it
True,
was
we
pretty
did.
cool. Now we just got our local peeps who he wants to know how many baskets you need to win a game. You need one more than the other team.
At least.
Yeah, you need one more point than the other team. Um, but yeah, it. You just hope that there is change that comes from this, right?
Funny
Like,
thing, what was the player's name? It was a couple years ago. There was a Milwaukee Buck, a guy that got tased by the police.
oh, he's
Remember?
still on the team.
He's still being
I believe his last name is, he's not one of their major players. I think his last
yeah,
name is Brown.
it's Sterling
Um,
Brown.
Sterling Brown.
He was one
That
that got.
is.
He was
Yep.
with George Hill on the thing. Yeah,
Yep.
Sterling Brown got tased by the police in Wisconsin.
Hmm. And he spoke about that incident. I don't think a lot of people even knew that had happened to him.
Yeah,
And for him, he didn't do what he parked in the wrong parking spot. I think his
yeah.
thing was like he was in a Walgreens parking lot,
And he was in the
parked in the
handicap spot
handicap
instead. They
spot,
approached him.
and they like, yeah, they like dragged it, put him on the ground, and the whole knee to the neck thing happened to him. I think he got a settlement for like
Oh wow.
several $100,000 out
They
of
didn't
that.
know he was an NBA player when they did that to him. So
Well,
yeah,
but
they
why
did.
should that matter though?
It shouldn't, but
Right? That's the whole point. Like it shouldn't matter, right?
yeah.
It's yeah, it's ridiculous, but um yeah, so the games are going to start. I I hope nothing else happens.
Ugh.
Like hopefully, I know that the police department released the name, I believe, of the officers that were involved. Obviously there's video of it. You just hope that all this light that's being shined on these type of issues, that it does have an end game, that there is
Yeah.
going to be change that's pushed. And I think that's what the players that are in the bubble are hoping for. They're like, if we're going to keep playing and we're going to keep using this platform, something has to change, or
Yeah.
else we could see them shut. I mean, God forbid, if something else happens, the it's going to be over,
Well,
right? Like,
Kenosha is already really bad. What they have the militia out there trying to help the police with
mhm,
AK with assault rifles. You have one 17-year-old who actually killed two people and injured someone,
mhm.
and his lawyer's trying to say it was self-defense, but he was out there with an assault rifle, and there was a confrontation with some of the people who were protesting, and no one knows. He says he was defending himself, and he was the
I
only
mean,
one
there's
with
a
a gun.
video. Let me tell you something.
There's video of him running
I
around. I saw that, but
In the last like couple of days, I've seen more videos of people dying to last a
yeah,
lifeline. Like I
it's
don't
2020.
need to
We
see
see this,
that. Yeah, I don't
you
need to
know.
see people dying. And yeah, I watched that video as well. And it's how do people like, because I'm sure our kids, you have young kids. I have a son that's 13. It's a difficult conversation that I'm going to have with him on like, okay, look at this and look at that. I don't want to show my son somebody dying though. You know what I
No,
mean? It's like,
yeah, they're too young for that. Their minds are still trying to process, you know, getting along with each other and and
right.
like making grades and
And
doing their
Minecraft.
sports or Minecraft and things like that. You don't want them to know about when you get older, there's still bullies in the world, that are doing certain things. And
Yeah, it's really an unfortunate situation. But the games are going to return tomorrow. I just, I'm ready to start seeing some games again, but I'm happy that these guys, for them, again, it doesn't matter if you are on board with everything they say. Again, it goes back to what Hill said. You need to educate yourself, and I think everybody on this situation needs to educate themselves. And the players, JB Bickerstaff, he was talking about, look, the players that are learning about this stuff, they need to align themselves with and talk to the people that have been fighting this movement for years and
right,
decades. You know what I mean? To jump in, I think I worry about sometimes people saying the wrong thing. Like I don't know if you saw LeBron when he talked about, well, you don't know what was going through that cop's mind. Maybe he was mad at his wife that morning.
that's right.
I think
Yeah,
when you start saying stuff like that, it's like, ew, I don't, you gotta be careful, you know,
yeah.
what you throw out there. But
I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I rarely think that a policeman, got up that morning and goes, think I'm gonna shoot a black person today. Like, I don't
right,
think that in my mind. Now, I mean, has it happened before? I'm sure maybe in history it's happened, but I would say that the majority of these things are they're just some people just aren't trained enough. Some people just shouldn't be in law enforcement.
well, there's
There's
that
some
too,
people
right?
there's some people that if you actually went through rigorous training and uh, recruitment and things like that, you'd see that they probably fall short and wouldn't shouldn't mentally do that, or they shouldn't be. Or there should be police that don't carry guns. Maybe they should be the ones that are writing tickets or doing different things like that. But there's when you give a person a gun, all of us make mistakes, right? You go to work and you made a mistake and you got wrote up by your boss because it's like, oh man, you shouldn't have done that. You talked to a customer wrong or you did this or whatever. But their
Hmm.
mistakes are life and death, right? And if you're a person that's hair trigger, they're afraid at the moment and they don't know how to stay cool and calm and collective. You get things like this, where is average Joe Schmo. I mean, I wouldn't be cool in the moment if I thought someone was about to try to hurt me or my family or something. But that's why I'm not a policeman.
Right. And
you know,
I think the bottom line is whether you think Mr. Blake was in any way wrong, or if you think the police handled it wrong, i- it's a tragic situation.
oh yeah,
It's, I think, one that could have been easily avoided. I know that they released details today saying that the cops tased him before they shot him. I mean, just tackle the dude if you think he's walking away and you're telling him not to. He clearly didn't have a weapon at the time. You know
right.
what I mean? It's I don't know. You're gonna turn off a lot of, again, once it turns political, people can't have a reasonable, discussion a lot of times. It's just tearing the other ones down. Everybody
Yep.
that, you know, yeah, it's just really unfortunate. I wonder how the NBA player psyche is being affected by all of this in the bubble. Like, what are the games going to be like on Saturday? Like
Yeah.
the Bucks, the pressure that was on them when they made this decision to boycott, had to be enormous. They knew
Oh yeah.
that it could shut down the entire playoffs. The
Right.
meetings that the players went in, the meetings that the owners went in, like, I wonder how it's going to affect the games. If we start to bring it back to basketball, just the effect that it's going to have on the product, because
Right.
stress, and they're in the playoffs. That's stressful enough, and then you add on this social thing, and then a boycott, and
And how many people are in tears when they're talking about it in front of the press? And these are men that you've never seen
that,
show
yep,
that type of vulnerability
right,
before
right.
in front of people, and they're just like breaking down talking about it.
Yeah,
And
professional athletes aren't always known as the emotional
yeah,
type,
yeah, they cry when they win championships, or
right, right.
but other than that, you don't really see them break down emotionally like
Or if
that.
they get fouled.
And don't think get fouled. Yeah, it's more whining. It's more of a
Yeah,
whine.
yeah, but you don't see them break down in tears. But again, it's like when we started off, it goes back to just, you got to listen to people, man. You have to hear them out, have some empathy, and I think that's when this will start to hopefully change. I
When you
wonder
think
if
about like baseball and hockey and other sports,
and the
actually,
WNBA, right,
WNBA,
all shut
hockey's in
down.
their playoffs.
Right. Well, I think they were the last. I'm not sure if they shut down initially, but like Major League Baseball following suit. I would say basketball is probably the number two sport for Americans.
Yeah.
So if football were going right now, would they have shut down?
Well, football is the other league that is predominantly African American.
Right.
There's baseball and hockey aren't there, but so it's more impressive. It's impressive to see that Major League Baseball, the commissioner even came out because there was some guy that had a mic on, an
Hmm.
executive for a team that had a mic on and didn't know it, and he was just complaining about his owner saying something and he was saying the commissioner just doesn't get it. The commissioner said, yeah, he ought to, we ought to see if the players will just take the field, have a moment of silence and then play the game, and things like that. And he's like, he just doesn't get it. And then apparently he was actually misspoken. It wasn't the commissioner who said that. The commissioner said, I never told anybody what to do with their teams. It was actually the management of that guy's
Oh,
team that
that
had
that
mentioned something like
particular
that.
team.
So the commissioner came out and said, hey, I'm not going to squash any player. If the players want to voice, and it's another new thing for baseball.
Hmm.
Football, like we talked about the other day, those owners, they're in the business of squashing free speech.
Right.
They're in the business of saying, "Hey, cut it down. We got to make this money."
Well,
You
you
know,
start, when everybody talks about the millionaires, that the people that are completely against the boycott, them not playing, they're like, oh, these are just millionaires throwing fits or whatever. But it takes, unfortunately, in this country, money. Once money starts coming into the equation,
oh
that's
yeah,
when things really start to get interesting, and
hmm
that's when changes start to happen. And
oh
it's
yeah,
not just millions, because if it was just a millionaire complaining, the billionaires would be like, right,
right, yeah,
whatever. But it's when you start getting billionaires involved, and these owners of these teams, these are billion-dollar teams.
oh
You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, you start
multi-billion
affecting
dollar teams.
you start affecting those pockets, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we should have a discussion.
You
We
know what?
should.
And they'll say whatever keeps making their money, which is
Hmm.
fine, long as they're on the right side of history. When Colin Kaepernick started kneeling, their stance was easy because a lot of fans didn't care about it and they just wanted to play. The president came out and said, don't deal with it. So those guys like Jerry Jones and them could actually go in there and say, yeah, don't kneel or you're not going to
Hmm.
play or we're not going to pay you. Or they could do all that stuff. When it's starting to become a national movement,
Hmm.
and if they are the only league where where the owners do that again to the players and say,
Right.
"Oh, you guys are going to play, or we're going to take your checks, or you guys are going to, you're not going to do nothing during the national anthem, all this
Right.
stuff." If they choose to take that, then they're going to take a lot of backlash. And PR is a big part of business. You want to always be on the right side of your public relations. So I think the NFL, now that this is happening, I think
Hmm.
the NFL is going to have to, just like Roger Goodell coming out and saying, "Hey, we're standing for racial injustice now." Like, you weren't a couple years ago, but
Yeah, well,
welcome to the party.
because it wasn't affecting their pockets at the time.
That's right. When it starts affecting their pockets, whether they believe it or not, they're going to try
Right.
to say
That's
what
when
they got
they
to
want to
say.
smooth everything over at that
Oh
point.
yeah.
So if you're watching now and if you have a comment, again, feel free. We'll integrate your questions and comments into our discussion the best we can. Um, but yeah, is there anything, I mean, we could talk, it's a tough because, right, we're sports oriented, right?
Yeah,
So
we
this
talk
is a
about the
tough,
games. We talk about the scoreboard. And
right. So like I'm not super into politics. I just because whenever I do see it, it's always with a lot of venom, you know what I
yeah,
mean? So it's it's just tough. I'm ready for 2020 to just be over. Like,
over. Get it done.
just
That's what
just
kind of
get
how
it
the
over.
state of our country is, right? Is that it seems like we're so separated on two sides that
Hmm.
you're not allowed to have an opinion. You have to pick a side and stick with that side's opinion.
Well, the timing
It's
of this too, with the being a presidential election
election
year,
year. Yeah.
that has to, I mean,
And they're using some of these things
it's
as
playing into it for sure.
part, they're using some of these things as part of their way to say, "Hey, if you're on my side, this is what I believe, so
Hmm.
vote for me." And if you're on my side, and you can't really think to be honest. I know when I came up, there was certain things, like when we were at work, there were certain things you always say. You don't talk about religion
Politics.
or politics,
Right.
right? Because people get passionate about those things. So
Yeah.
you just don't talk about it. People didn't talk about who they voted for sometimes, especially if it was a controversial pick, and you just didn't get into a lot of heated arguments day to day. But the way the politicians have kind of led us here, I mean, they are our leaders, right? And I believe, I believe
Yikes.
the state of the politicians right now, they have, this is what they want. They want to people be visibly divided. They
Right.
they want you to say, "I'm on," like you said, draw a line in the sand. There's no blurry line. There's no jumping the fence. Like I've always said, hey, there's some things I'm conservative about, and there's some things that I'm
Money.
liberal about. And I and so I and so I don't want to pick a side. I don't want to say
Right.
I'm gonna pick this candidate because they're on this side. I'm gonna pick this candidate because they believe in some of the stuff I believe in, or
Well,
they don't, or
yeah, I think it
that's politics.
2020, yeah, just 2020 in general, I think you probably have more stressed out people now in every walk of life than there
Oh yeah.
has been since probably 9/11. I
Oh
would say
yeah.
this is the most stressful thing people have dealt with since 9/11.
Yep.
And
That was stressful.
that was a, historic event, a sad event. A lot of people lost their lives. But now this is affecting, almost everybody knows somebody that's had the virus. You're worried about your grandparents or, parents getting it. So there's all this stress on families. And then you add in this volatility of people that disagree with a movement going at it, and it's just like it's literally throwing gasoline on a fire.
Oh
And I
yeah.
think there's almost zero way to keep everything peaceful with the movement and the things that the NBA are talking about. You didn't talk about what Brent did the night before either. I don't
What
know
I do
what
then?
I don't
Oh
know.
no,
What
I
did
didn't
you
do
do?
anything
I
like
don't
that.
know.
That's one.
What did you
That's one
do?
of my friends, so it's
That's from
probably not
Joe
very
Luna. Joe
specific.
Luna. What did you do the night before? I guess
I don't
there's
know. I I go home and I come back and I I stay home. I don't know what I'm doing,
Whatever it was, Joe, he's not going to share it. he's he's keeping that to himself. But
watch a
yes,
little NBA if it was on. It wasn't on, but
yep. So hopefully the next time, I mean, this isn't going anywhere. This is something that's going to be a topic for until there's change, probably. But I hope that the next time that we talk, we can talk some basketball, bring it back more into our wheelhouse of,
yeah,
you know, the Lakers versus the Clippers or something like that, So,
right. I think this is going to be. I mean, not think. It's definitely going to be a historic year. And when you look back at like the NBA partial years, they had the lockout year, right?
right.
And a lot of people will say like, well, the champions. What was it? Houston won that year? Was it Houston that won that year? And the Bulls didn't win because they Michael Jordan had just come back
Hmm.
and in the partial year, and the Bulls weren't ready yet. But then, of course, the Bulls won like three more times after that, and the Bulls are winning every year except for when Michael Jordan decided to go play baseball and then, then come back. But some people will say those championships have an asterisk because of the whole league wasn't at full function and
Right.
it was a partial year. They didn't do the All-Star game, and I think originally this year probably would have done the same. Like whoever the champion was, they probably would have got an asterisk next to it in people's minds saying, well, I mean, you won, but there was the bubble. All the teams that were winning
I think it's going to be
had
harder
time
to win
basketball
this
to go.
year. There's no home court. You have all this stuff going on. If there's an asterisk, it'll be for it being one of the most difficult championships to win, I think.
Yeah, but home court is a big deal, like
Right.
to some of the players, right? And
Right.
and and you have home court you're missing. They're missing their families. You have the playoff race was hot and heavy before they had to shut down. So
Hmm.
some teams have come into the bubble and don't have the momentum they had. Like look at OKC, they just came in. They're flat as all get
Hey,
out.
they're 2-2
Coming
with
into the
Houston,
playoffs.
though.
Well, now they are, yeah.
Yeah.
And they should have been more because Russell Westbrook wasn't there. But yeah,
Right.
they struggled at the beginning of the playoffs, and other teams haven't aren't the same teams they were, and some players are dealing with weird injuries, and
Hmm.
so I think that it's not the same as having a full season then the playoffs. On the other end, they had rest. You have some players who never would have made the playoffs and actually were able to play a little bit. So
Right. Yeah, I don't.
it,
We'll never see a season like this again. I think is the
no.
hopefully. I
Well,
really hope
the
not.
question is now are the owners going to lock out if the players don't play
Well,
the next
that's
season, right?
right. Well, okay. So the from the way I understand it, which if you're in chat and you know more, feel free to tell me I'm wrong. My wife does it all the time. Uh, they if they don't finish, then the owners could void the CBA, and
Right.
then you could have a lockout. So, but hopefully we won't get there. I'm happy. There's gonna be basketball tomorrow. I think that's Brent saying he's got to go.
No, that was an alarm saying that don't forget about the kid.
Oh yeah, don't do that. So I think we'll leave it at that for now. You go check out the kid. Next time we talk, we'll be able to talk some basketball. I appreciate everybody that stopped by. Hit the subscribe button. I think this is probably how we're going to do a lot of our shows from now on. I enjoy it. I hope Brent's enjoying it. I think it's fun.
Yeah, and
Get
people
to
comment on it like, do you want us to get our faces off the screen and just go back to podcasts?
Oh, dude, I'm pretty.
Yeah, hey, at least my
I'll
wife
keep
likes me.
it.
That's I'm
Yeah.
married now, so I don't really care what
Yeah,
anybody says.
exactly, exactly. But we have fun doing it. You can hit us up on Twitter at midrange_game. Hit the subscribe below. We would love to talk to you again. But for now, I'm Dean. That is Brent. We are Midrange Game.